So you've clicked on this video for one of three reasons. You're curious about Linux, you're familiar with it, or you fancy switching from another operating system, or you're a hardcore expert who wants to know how full of shit I am. Either way, thank you for joining me. I thought it'd be a good idea to talk about what Linux is, considering I did a video about what Linux gaming is like in 2022. I never really explained what Linux was. That's what I'm going to attempt to do here. And if you stick around to the end, I can show you a way of trying out Linux without having to completely switch over your computer to it. If you stick around, I'll show you how to do that as well. So what is Linux? Linux is an operating system like Windows and Mac OS. It's more similar to Mac OS than Windows. If you're coming from Mac OS, you'll be able to see some similarities. The Linux kernel, which is the actual Linux part of the Linux operating system, was created by this guy, Linus Torvalds. Generally speaking, the Linux operating system is made up of several parts. I'm not getting into all of these now because I don't want to overwhelm anyone who is looking at this for the very first time. Why should you try Linux? I don't know about you, but I like to be known as a wizard from time to time. Linux is great for repurposing old hardware. So what I mean by that is, if you take a look at the system requirements for example, Ubuntu, which is a Linux operating system, and compare it to Windows 11, you can see that even just the memory itself is double the requirements. It's just generally all around faster and better for repurposing old hardware. Linux is free. We all love something that's free, unless it's shit. But Linux isn't shit. Yeah, it's free, and this is great because there are many flavors of Linux operating system, which are also known as distributions. And you may find that you bounce between distributions trying to figure out which one is your favorite or which one you like the most. And this is great, as I say, because it's free. It doesn't cost you anything. And it's open source as well, which means that you can look at any of the code and see if anyone's trying to be a sneaky beaky and track your information. But generally speaking, that doesn't happen. This is a big one, and this is why Linux is used on servers. So it's very seldom that Linux will just crash like Windows can, and it's very seldom that you have to stop all your work to update the operating system. So you can do like live patches of your operating system kernel while your operating system is running and while you're still able to use it. Whereas if you try to do that with Windows, it just will give you a blue screen. It just won't work. You have to just stop all your work and wait. So that's another reason why Linux is really good. Zero downtime. This is probably my favorite reason why you should try Linux, is it's very customizable. So you could maybe find a distribution that you like. You can change how icons look. You can make your operating system look like the user interface of the Starship Enterprise, or you can be pure minimalist and go that approach as well. What are the drawbacks of Linux? It's not for everyone. What I mean by that is there are certain areas where Windows is stronger than Linux, and the area that I can think of off the top of my head right now is gaming. Now that is slowly changing with what Steam are trying to do and Valve are trying to do, sorry. And generally speaking, software applications are better optimized, so that's something to consider. Yeah, so this is the biggest drawback, which is the learning curve. This could be like 2 or 3 points on its own. Yeah, the biggest thing is the learning curve. So if you've never even used Mac OS, if you're coming straight from Windows and you don't know anything about computers, it'll be a sensational learning curve. Now the good thing is, the more people that are starting to adopt it, and if you choose if you choose a popular Linux OS, there's more support out there on blog posts, and generally speaking, if you have a problem and you Google it, someone else will likely have had the problem, and this gets better and better with more adoption for Linux. So there is that as well, which I touched on at the start. So the learning curve's massive, and you don't want to install Linux on your main computer in case you balls it up. So the best way to do it is to run it on a virtual machine. So let's just take a look at how we can get a Linux operating system running in a VM so you can try it out. Okay, so let's just use Ubuntu because it's pretty popular and has plenty of support. This is a Linux distribution it's one of the more well-rounded versions. So go to downloads, and then this LTS means long-term support, which means you have less updating to do, and then you can just download it. You'll also need VirtualBox. VirtualBox is software we're going to use to run our VM in. So you just hit this big ominous looking download button, and depending on what computer you're doing this on, will depend on what you download, obviously. So I'm on Windows, so it's gonna start downloading. Okay, so let's install VirtualBox. Yeah, I'm gonna install mine in a different location, but you can keep everything the same. Just make sure you have plenty of space on in your location where you want to install it. Yep, let's go there and install and keep everything standard and just hit, do you want a network interfaces? Yes, and install. It's installed, right? So what we want to do is hit new. I'm gonna call this test. You can call it Big Hairy Balls if you want. You don't need to do this. You can keep yours the same here in this machine folder bit. Then Linux, we need to select that. If it's not selected, then what we need to do is, if it's not selected in the version, you need to go all the way down to the Ubuntu section and hit Ubuntu 64-bit. Then hit next. Then give it 4 gigs. You can give it more if you want. I'm giving it 4 because the likelihood is someone will have only 8 gigs. We're gonna create a virtual hard disk. We're gonna keep this standard as well. VirtualBox disk image. We're gonna put it as fixed size. I'm gonna give it, you can give this whatever you have free. I'm just gonna give it 62 for, yeah, roughly 60 gigs. And it's gonna create it for me. Okay, our virtual machine has been created. We just need to do a couple more things. So if you right click on it and go to settings and go to system and processor, it'll set this as 1 for default, and depending on how many CPUs you have, you can adjust this. I'm going to give it 2 because, as I said before, I'm stingy. And then what you need to do is go from system to storage, click this icon, this empty disk, click this and choose your disk file, which is this, my Ubuntu. So if you just choose disk file and then go and find it in your folders, which is, it's just opened mine for me, which is great. Click that, click OK, hit start, and watch the magic happen. I'm gonna try or install Ubuntu. Okay, so we're in this Ubuntu bit. You can just install it on your virtual disk. Go through whatever these settings are, like you're going through a normal operating system. Install normal installation, download with, yeah, I'm gonna do minimal. Because I don't want any extra software that I don't need for, because all I'm doing is testing. This is fine because this just works on your virtual memory that you've allocated. This is your virtual hard disk, so don't worry about it. It should be good to go. This is my time zone. The beans. Yeah, this is just for testing. This isn't gonna be my actual OS, so never fear. And then once it's installed, you can play about with it. Okay, installation complete. Installation is complete. You need to restart your computer. Let's just hit restart, and it'll just restart our VM for us. Remove installation media, then %. Yeah, okay. We don't have any installation media, so just hit enter. And the good thing about these VMs is that you can be in the middle of using it and just pause it in its state and restart it again. So that's an advantage of using a virtual machine. The main thing is it's great for trying things out. The one thing I would advise against is using this app store. Now, they try and do it, like most of the Linux OSs have an app store. Well, I say most of them, most of the ones I've tried, which are mostly based on Ubuntu, but it's generally a bit crap. So you're better just going to the website of the software you want to download. If you've got this far, you can just play about with it now, which is the best thing to do. And on that note, I'm going to leave it there. If there's something I've missed or anything you want me to touch on, let me know. But until then, cheery bye, wizards.